The people in the state pay personal income tax. On top end, don't. $30,000 and down are exempted, so which means the working people in the middle, generally the families with kids, are the ones who have to pay all the increase, and our businesses who pay sub-S rates would pay. Not good policy. Good tax policy says as broad as possible, with the lowest rate as possible, with as many people involved. That's good tax policy. Make your sales tax. Can the sales tax raise enough money? The answer is yes. You could raise the rate. We say no, leave the rate the way it is, leave us competitive with our states around us, include more items in what's taxable. We have a narrow base in Pennsylvania, we can do that. About 70% of the replacement can come from that. Then I say let's step in and utilize and take about 50 to 75% of the royalty money that's generated from Marcellus shale gas on state-owned property. Why? Because our dollars, tax dollars, bought state-owned property. And if the state is going to benefit by this unknown new benefit, they ought not be growing government with that money. Give it back to the people who bought it, and think for a minute, think with me, Alaska energy dividend. Yeah. Put this back in the homeowner's pocket in the form of the elimination of property tax. Then we take $1 billion of the gambling money, which is there for property tax, and between the three of those, you replace the money. How quickly can it happen? If you do all together, commercial and residential together, one vote of the legislature can make it happen. It will take, under our plan, it take about 3 years for it to be phased out. Because to change the way we are funding $19 billion can't just happen overnight. So we phase it over about 3 years, so your private taxes would be frozen the first year. Next year they would go down 25%, and then the next year 50%, the next year 75%, and that would be the last bill that we paid. If we would have done this 4 years ago, we'd be sitting here right now in Pennsylvania without any property taxes. Can you imagine? Can you imagine what Pennsylvania would be like?
Yes, we can.
That's it. I can too. It's a dream right now, but it can be reality.
About my comment about parties, maybe there are some good Republicans. If you can,
there are some.
If you can walk your talk, more power to you. The good lady stole my question. I was going to ask to get down into the weeds of how you replace the property tax. But in talking about the Marcellus shale, there have been, and I'm not an environmentalist, God forbid, but there have been environmental difficulties. I own property that's surrounded by drilling in certain areas. And there have been difficulties. Some of the property owners that have leased land and allowed for exploration on their land are sorry they did so. They've ended up with infested wells, problems with drinking water, etc., etc. How do you manage that?
Well, you manage that by a couple of things. Number one, it's fortunate that the technology is there now to prevent most of that. Even in those cases where wells have been affected, they're going back and they're drilling new wells for people. The industry has promised to, where those things are affected, they will replace them. And if it's a new well, they'll drill a new well. Up to this point, the drilling has gone very, very well. A couple of examples, a couple of things have occurred. But most have not. I mean, most problems have not occurred. I think that, like with anything else, nothing is risk-free. But if there is an issue, that's where government is there to make sure that it's not just where you run rampant and you destroy people's property, back to property rights. You don't destroy property, you don't do those things. But I think the technology is there. I've been to these locations. I know what's there. We can do safe environmental drilling and benefit the people of the state significantly. I believe we can.
Thank you, Sam. I have what I think is a very difficult question for a politician. So I hope, forgive me, but I think you'll, pardon me, I think you'll agree with with where I'm going. I think it was Mr. Dolphin who just asked the last question, spoke at the beginning, put his finger on one of the roots of the problem. You put your finger on one root, and that is that truth has been lost. It's been lost in our government, it's been lost in our society, largely. Mr. Dolphin put his finger on another root of the problem, which is that government is made up of the people. Government will be corrupt if the people are corrupt. Businesses will be corrupt if the people are corrupt, which is why the free market alone cannot rule. We saw that 100 years ago. So my question to you is, I think we all recognize that a strong, ethical, truthful leader in Pennsylvania can effect a lot of change. And I think you've laid out a very clear path for what that change can look like. And even if you're not elected, you've given us a very good standard by which we can judge whoever sits in that chair for the next 4 years. So I want to thank you for that, and I hope you keep speaking. Even if you don't win this election, I hope you keep this up so that we can all see what the standard really should be. But the question is, how much can government really do? And how much does it have to be the people, society, changing at a very fundamental level? That we act in our homes ethically, that we act in our businesses ethically, that we act on the streets ethically and with truth. How much can government affect change, and how much must be coming from us?
That's a great pointed question. And I've thought much about that because at the end of the day, I've often, people have often said, we are where we are because we've had bad leaders in office. And I've often thought through that, I said, well, do we have bad leaders in office? Is our country bad because the leaders have been corrupt? Or have we gotten leaders that reflect generally the will of the people? I think generally we have allowed ourselves to elect people who have reflected who we are. I think that's changing. Can government make the difference? The answer is no. Government has a responsibility to rule justly, so the laws are passed are just, consistent with constitutional rule of law, are right. Those things are to be done right. People tend to follow, there's no question about it, but our founders were very clear on this. And they said this in this free republic. Ben Franklin said himself to the woman who said, "What have you just now done?" And he said, "We have given you a republic if you can keep it." Because a republic depends on people disciplining themselves. And it was more than one founder who said that our system of government, our free republic, would depend on people individually disciplining and governing themselves, they said, according to the Ten Commandments. Now, why did they say that? Because the Ten Commandments are the basis for Western law. Right. It is what hangs behind our Pennsylvania Supreme Court, right on the wall. It's what used to hang in all of our classrooms. It's what used to hang in our courthouses. Because at the end of the day, if people do those simple basic things, don't lie, don't steal, don't commit adultery, don't envy and take that which doesn't belong to them, frankly, you have a free society. If a society does not limit themselves according to those basic rules, what are you forced with? A police officer standing on the corner, armed, to force people? Well, at that point, you no longer have a free republic.